Am I an idiot for accidentally causing the death of my abusive stepdad? When I was 9, my mom met a man who, for the sake of the story, we'll call JJ, was an unremarkable man. He was a chef and he was from New York, living in South Philadelphia at the time. My mom, being emotionally unstable, decided to give him a try after lots of past relationships not working out. Seriously, she has a bad taste in men. And I feel it is a good time to mention my dad is dead from a drug overdose. Philadelphia man. Drugs are everywhere. So my mom was desperate for someone to be that guy who is good for her and me. She gives Jay a chance and out of nowhere, boom, Jay has cancer. Came out of the blue and my mom's heartstrings were pulled by him and she was attached to him for good. I was 9 at the time, so off I was a stupid kid who never thought my mom could be wrong. Well, I didn't notice her getting black eyes, but my grandfather did. So one day at a corner store in my neighborhood, he decided to beat Jay black and blue. He was stuck on the couch for days, and looking back it brings a smile to my face. But he convinced my mom that my grandmother, who was manipulative, manipulated my grandfather to beat him up, so we have to move. After an intervention was held, holy freaking poop, I was there, it was wild. My mom had decided to move. We packed our things in our van and I held my 90-pound Rottweiler on my lap and we moved to freaking Florida. Chapter 2 fucking Florida. I'm gonna admit, life kinda sucked here. For 5 years I was stuck in such a dumpster fire of a state with no family support. My mom was abused daily and I was mostly mentally abused. I also lost my great-grandmother at this time and I wanted to go back to Philly for the funeral, but Jay said no. Eventually in 2021 my mom left Jay. And then the worst night of my life happened. Chapter 3 Halloween 2021. I was still in Florida, shocker, and I went trick-or-treating with a younger friend. At this point in time my mom was paying for Jay's new apartment because she just wanted him gone. Well, he broke into our apartment, took my puppy for a walk. It was a weird time to care about a dog while committing a crime, but hey, my dog had fun and smashed everything. My mom decided instead of calling the police she would confront him with me, alone. So we went, and as a precaution my mom had a knife on her. We went, and when we got there was a girl with Jay. A fight ensued and I called 911. I also beat the everlasting poop out of Jay. Unfortunately my mom couldn't see that and thought Jay was winning. So she stabbed him. Non-lethal, his fat got it, he didn't go to the hospital. So when police showed up they gave a good look at my mom with choke marks from the fight, and arrested her for assault and breaking and entering. Chapter 4 Leaving Florida and having a very merry Christmas. Well, the trial came and went. My mother is off the hook, but she will be a felon until the completion of a program. So we left him in Florida and decided to move back north to New Jersey. My mom breaking up with Jay was due to me because I pushed hard for it. Life continues. But November came around and I received news that made me burst out in laughter. Jay's sister came forward and told us he shot himself in the head. I even read his suicide note and everything. I ruined his relationship with my mom and karma came back. Life goes on, and he dies unloved and alone. Edit. Thank you all for the supportive comments. I do want to clear up one thing. My mother has mental issues and she was diagnosed wrong. She was taking medicine that made her worse, not better. She's on track to get off her current medication and take new medication soon. Edit 2. I don't feel guilty about what happened. I actually feel angry that he's dead. I would rather have him live as a homeless bum with nothing in his life. Unfortunately, he took the easy way out, which was the bullet. But still he's dead, so I get some comfort from that. Not an idiot. You saved your mother from his abuse. What he chooses to do after she broke free of him is on him, not you. If your mother had been the one to kill herself because of the abuse, you would have regretted not getting her out of the situation for the rest of your life. If you aren't already, please look into a therapist. You did good fighting for your mom, honey. Not an idiot. Jay was an adult who made his own choices. If he had wanted your mother to stay in his life, then maybe not abusing her, and you would have gone a long way toward keeping the relationship intact. You helped your mother distance herself and you from a toxic abuser. You were on the right. If Jay couldn't deal with that, the onus was on him to seek professional help. He didn't. That's on him. Is he responsible for killing his stepdad? Let me know in the comments. Now, am I an idiot for making my mom homeless after she stole from my grandma with dementia? Background: I had a pretty terrible childhood. Don't get me wrong, I have heard of way worse, but it was far from healthy or normal. When I was young, my parents were millionaires, my father's parents owning several of the largest businesses in the region. They divorced before I was a teenager, and both of their lives plummeted downhill. By the time I was 16, I was living on my own. Drugs, alcohol, and addiction have long since killed them both. Neither of them ever worked a job since I was a teenager. Both of them died homeless before the age of 50. Here's the situation. I joined the military and left town without ever looking back. As more years passed, I added more and more distance, physically and mentally, from my parents. When I was 20, I learned that my mother had been arrested for stealing a large sum of money from my grandmother, who was living on her own. But in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's, the state ended up pressing charges against my mother because my grandmother would not. The detective told me that they had to because my mom and her past boyfriend were fueling the criminal underground where she lived. I was lost and shocked. I knew my mother had problems, but until this moment, I had always viewed her as a sort of forest hippie. This is the moment that is the catalyst for my nuclear revenge. You see, my grandmother was pretty wealthy. Terrified that she would be locked away in an old folks' home, she entertained the leeching of my mother and past guy. The problem is that it was never enough. Even after my grandmother bought my mother a house down the street from her, she continued to rob her own mother blind. She also fed my underage sister a stream of drugs and brought her in on the con. It ultimately resulted in my mother and sister getting their first felony conviction, grand theft and check fraud, which my mother tried to pin on her own daughter because she was just a minor. A few years later, I was newly married with my first child and freshly returned from my first deployment to Iraq. We just completed another move across the country, and I am starting a new job at a new unit. I get home from work and have a strange short voicemail from my uncle, who's like the okayest guy I have ever met. It literally just says, "My mom is in the psych ward at the big hospital in her town. She left everything in your name. I'm flying back home." This is where I learned that the legal document my grandma had me sign when I was 16 made me the executor of her estate, power of attorney, etc. My unit arranges a very generous amount of time off to fly across the country and deal with this bizarre scenario. She lived alone in this massive house. My mom had destroyed the house my grandmother bought her, then moved into grandma's house on the auspices of caring for her. There were so many fleas inside that contractors I hired to make repairs wouldn't go inside. Needles everywhere, and for some reason, everything was an ashtray. It was an insane thing to witness, experience. I still refused to interact with my mom at this point of my life, but now that I had the keys to the kingdom, aka access to the pot o' gold, she tried to worm back into my life with a renewed vigor. I always just told her to frick off. My grandmother, in the meantime, had been deemed unfit to live on her own. I was 23, with a new baby and marriage, if you remember, so I made the poor decision to put my grandmother into a nursing home. I fixed up the house, rented it to create passive income so she would not deplete her savings, and headed back home. Of course, Grandma is spicy and got kicked out of her swanky retirement home when she broke a coffee cup over some other lady's head for snooping around in her room. She was apparently wearing my grandmother's shoes when she got clocked. The same woman, a resident, had propositioned me in front of my wife when we were touring the facility. She was a different kind of the same spicy as Grandma. Her only option after the incident was a psych ward. So my senile grandmother moved in with my family, and she lived with us for more than 5 years until her care was just out of our capability. This is about the time that I exacted my revenge. Now here's where I made her pay. When the state filed charges against my mother, way back when I was 20, part of her restitution included a lien that was placed against her property in the name of my grandmother for a little less than $100K. Some years later, my mother had not paid her property taxes in so long that she was about to lose the house. She called me to explain that the lien would not be paid if the house was auctioned, which I knew was not true, but I saw an opportunity. I eventually worked out a deal with her. She would sign the deed over to me, and I would then sell the house and pay for her to move somewhere else. I fly to town, meet her, and sign the deed over. She expected me to use my name and credit to get her a luxury apartment. She also wanted me to buy her a new truck, and let's not forget the moving company. I rented her a U-Haul truck and got her a storage unit that I had paid for 6 months. Then I put her and shithead up in an extended stay for a little while. I fixed up the property and sold it to the same rental group that bought my grandmother's house shortly before. I used the money to buy annuities that enable my grandmother to live in a normal house with a live-in nurse and care at 1:4 ratio, which is amazing for her. She still might run out of money because of what my mother did, and I honestly don't know what will happen then. She's got some years before I have to worry, and she is just shy of 100. My mother was on the street within 6 months. The last time I saw her, she looked like the crazy person who lives under a bridge. She did at one point. She was covered in sores, balding, and high on meth. She'd received a Social Security disability back payment of what would have been a significant amount for her. She died in a hospital less than 3 days later, partied herself to death. The boss dropped her off at the curb and never saw her again. I told the dude I would give him some money if he gave me the key to the storage unit. Somehow, years later, she had managed to keep it. I shared the loot with my siblings, gave Poss $100 and closed that chapter of my life permanently. Not an idiot. I have no sympathy for people who rob from their parents and also bring their children in. Not only that, but your mother also got that same child addicted to drugs. For your sister's sake, I hope she recovers, but that isn't anyone's responsibility but her own. Now, for the next story. Am I an idiot for canceling my wedding? Over the past year and a half, my fiancé, Jose, 27, male, and I, 25, female, have been planning a wedding for July of 2021. We've been together for 10 years and have lived together for 3 years. Jose and I both don't like the pomp and circumstance of weddings, and we're hoping to have a low-key, inexpensive one. My family, however, wanted something bigger. My mother has expressed to me just how much she's living through me in having this wedding. I have expressed to her plenty that social situations trigger my anxiety. She doesn't care. Jose and I gave in last year and agreed to marry in a church and have the big reception she wanted. Jose made sure if we were going to do this, my parents would pay for both the venue and the church fee. They agreed. Planning was stressful, and it caused a lot of tension between Jose and I. It turns out the stress wasn't coming from the planning itself, it was the wedding as a whole. With my therapist's help, we identified that being a bride embodied many things my mother berated me for growing up and acted as triggers for my PTSD. I came forward with my reservations to my mother. Her response was to gaslight me about my therapist's diagnosis and insist on the wedding happening the way we planned it. She joked that I could take some CBD or have a drink to stay calm during the wedding. She has also begun drinking to avoid confronting her feelings and regards it as the only thing she has that's hers. She does not take it seriously, and my father won't help. I found out that the private conversations I have had with my father about her drinking were shared with her. It got bad enough that at my bridal shower, she had 18 beers and berated my sister-in-law for calling her out on drunken poop talking my brother to family. Mind you, Jose's side of the family does not drink, as they've lost their grandfather to alcoholism. I feel horrible they were put in the position of having to watch her. When trying to make amends between my sister-in-law and her, she decided to take me on a car ride in which she screamed at, gaslit, and berated me for accusing her of being an alcoholic. She apologized for this half-heartedly, expecting me to forgive her and move on. As a result, I've gone no contact with her. Jose and I made calls and canceled the big wedding altogether and are instead going to quietly get married at the courthouse to set it with a small group present. Half of the deposit from the venue is non-refundable, but we decided to take a small personal loan to make sure we don't owe my parents anything at the end of this. His side of the family is completely on board, while mine is sending emails and pleading with me to be a better person and make up with her. I know I've made a lot of missteps in this. I should have set my boundaries much earlier in this mess and stayed firm in not having the wedding. I wanted to hear from an unbiased party whether I'm being unreasonable. Am I an idiot? Update. Yesterday, I married the love of my life and partner of 10 years in a quiet little backyard ceremony. 15 people were there, friends, family, and Jose's immediate family. The ceremony took all of 15 minutes thanks to our amazing JOP, and the celebration was fun. Casual conversation over a simple sandwich lunch. We got to catch up with friends we haven't seen since the pandemic started, as well as make fun memories with the people willing to understand and love us without judgment. My mother, in response to finding out I've gone no contact with the family and planned a private wedding without her, sent one of my aunts screaming at me the day before the wedding over email. Catholic guilt, gaslighting, the whole shebang. I went all in on telling my family exactly what I felt and dealt with in regards to my mother and them. They had the audacity to invent a story that Jose is nothing but a controlling abuser that deleted her first email. He's trying to steal me away from them and convince me it was the truth. They want me to forgive my mom and be the bigger person, even after detailing the extent of her abuse to them. I tore my aunt a new idiot over email, citing them all, my grandmother included, as cowards for not coming to me to tell me the alleged truth about Jose before. Offering pomp, circumstance, and praise for getting married to him. It's funny how quickly the narrative shifted from "oh, think of your poor mother" to "you poor, stupid child running into the arms of an abuser" to "you're a monster canceling our family." The block button has been my best friend. Within the last 72 hours I've learned exactly what kind of family I was raised in. In a way, I mourn that it had to be like this, no contact with the people I thought were supposed to love me. What I have realized is that their brand of love is conditional. My mother also demanded the money back for the venue and we sent a check to her. She still has chosen not to cash it. We have ample documentation to prove we have provided her that check. Jose is warning her in writing to cash that check by the 21st, or else we will stop that check and pay back the loan. Not an idiot. Congratulations on your wedding. I'm glad you took it of your day the way you wanted to. Toxic families suck, but it sounds like you've at least married into a much kinder, more loving family. Best of luck to you both in all your future endeavors. Not an idiot. Seems like your wedding was a metaphor for your life, a comfortable and loving event with plenty of room for the right people and not an inch for the wrong ones. I wish you and your new husband a long and happy life together.